Let me start by saying something that will immediately make half the internet angry and the other half nod slowly like they've been waiting for permission to say it. Religion didn't create God. The human brain did. Now, before anyone grabs a torch, a pitchfork, or a strongly worded YouTube comment, this episode is not a religion is stupid, and it's not a science has all the answers video. It's worse than that. Tonight, we're talking about the why the human mind is wired for belief, how religion hijacks some of the most powerful neural systems we have, how fear and shame became divine marketing tools, why spiritual practices can heal people, and why mixing religion with power is historically one of humanity's worst ideas. And here's the promise. Stay with me for the first 5 minutes, and I'll give you a psychological framework that lets you separate healthy spirituality, cultural conditioning, trauma-based belief, and straight up manipulation. So you can decide for yourself what stays, what goes, and what was never yours to begin with. Plant that thought. But let's go ahead and start right where religion actually lives, and that is your brain. Look, long before theology, scripture, or stained glass windows, humans had nervous systems trying to survive uncertainty. Neuroscience shows that religion and spiritual experiences reliably activate something we call the default mode network, the DMN. It's responsible for your self narrative, your story, right? Who you are, and meaning making. Let's talk about the temporal parietal junction. This is involved in agency detection. Someone did this. The amygdala, fear, awe, and the existential threat, baby, because you know it's out there. You just know it is. I better hedge my bets. The prefrontal cortex, your decision-making center, right? This is your executive suite, if you will, right? This is where you all your logic pumps out of. It's also responsible for moral reasoning and rule internalization. Now, here's the key idea. The brain is allergic to randomness. It is absolutely repelled by chaos. When lightning strikes, crops fail, or a loved one dies, the brain doesn't ask, what is statistically likely to have happened there? It asks, who did this and why? This is called hyperactive agency detection, right? An evolutionary adaptation that helped us survive predators. If you assume rustling grass is a lion and you're wrong, you're embarrassed. If you assume it's nothing and you're wrong, you're lunch. Now, religion exploits this bias beautifully, right? You add some ritual, some repetition, emotional music, synchronized movements, right? Moral storytelling, and congratulations, you've achieved the activated response of dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin simultaneously. That's neurochemistry with a narrative, my dudes. So, what can I give you that you can use tonight, right? The early deliverable I talked about a few minutes ago. Well, I'm going to give you the 4 belief filters. Here's the promise tool. Write this stuff down. When evaluating any religious or spiritual belief, I want you to ask these questions. All right. So, number 1, does this reduce fear or increase it? Number 2, does this expand agency or restrict it? Number 3, does this encourage curiosity or does it punish curiosity? Does it punish asking questions? And number four, does this improve real world behavior or only internal guilt? Healthy spirituality? Healthy spirituality passes all four. Manipulative religion? It fails at least two of these. Now, we're going to come back to this. Let me give you a brief history, if you will, from the campfires to the cathedrals, right? Early religion wasn't about morality. It was about cohesion, right? Hunter-gatherer tribes, they used shared myths to do things like, I don't know, coordinate their behavior, right? I mean, this created that social glue where a society needs to sort of operate smoothly. It helped to reduce internal violence. I mean, myths, right? They keep us sort of like on the straight and narrow. They help to create meaning through suffering or in suffering, right? When you're going through a tough time, these religious myths, they give it meaning. It gives you a reason for what's happening, and it can kind of like relax your nervous system as a result of that. It might suck, but at least we know why it's going on. And as societies grew, I mean, religion evolved really into institutional control, right? I mean, it went from the campfire to a very highly structured religious authority. I mean, institutional control. Rules became divine. God told you to do this. The gods, the sun, whatever your God was, authority became sacred, right? Disobedience became sin. It became the last thing you wanted to do in any society because you were going to get kicked out of that tribe. And then you're having to fend for yourself. I mean, this wasn't accidental. This was efficient. I mean, if the king says pay taxes, you question it. If God says pay taxes, you kneel and say, thank you, Lord. Can I have another? Can I give another? Religion became the original operating system for civilization. And like all old software, it hasn't aged well without the updates. It's like owning a computer, right? And owning one of those old MacBooks and never getting any updates. I mean, that piece won't even operate, right? It is going to be glitching out all over the place. And this explains a lot about what's going on in our current society because fear, shame, and control seem to be all of the religious levers. So let's talk about the emotional backbone of organized religion. If you want to build a system that lasts thousands of years, you don't build it on logic. You build it on the most primitive parts of the human brain possible. You build it on the fear shame feedback loop. So, what is this fear shame formula, if you will? All right. So, fear plus shame equals obedience. Oh. Fear is the wall that keeps you in. Shame is the leash that pulls you back. You are conditioned to fear the external, right? Hell, divine punishment, or the terrifying prospect of exile from your tribe. And you're doing this while simultaneously being taught to loathe the internal curiosity, doubts, natural biological impulses. And this is why the neuroscience of shame is so interesting. I mean, psychologically, shame is one of the most brutal behavioral regulators we have. I mean, shame is more effective than joy. Reward sometimes, most of the time. I mean, peer-reviewed research, it actually shows that social rejection and shame, they activate the anterior cingulate cortex, the same neural circuit that processes physical pain. I mean, when you feel shame in a religious context, your brain isn't just having a bad thought. It's not just having a bad day. It's experiencing biological trauma. You are experiencing a full-blown injury, my guys. And this leads us to the trap of impossible standards, right? This is the brutal mechanism. Shame works best when the rules are fundamentally impossible for a biological human to follow perfectly. By pathologizing natural curiosity or sexual thoughts, right? The system ensures that you're in a constant state of failing. This creates permanent dependency. I mean, you aren't being saved so much as you are being kept in a state of chronic repentance. And this makes you incredibly manageable, baby. You aren't broken. You've just been fitted with a leash that you pulled on yourself. Now, I've sat here for the last 10 minutes and I have just ragged on religious institutions. Not spirituality, that's a beautiful thing, but religious institutions, right? But I would be remiss not to mention the benefits because, yes, there are real ones. Let's be fair. Science is about accuracy, not dunking on people's beliefs. If religion were purely a tool for control, it wouldn't have survived. It is much more than that, my dudes. Let's hear about the other side, right? It persists because it provides massive, measurable psychological benefits that are hard to find elsewhere in the modern world. I mean, the resilience factor. A spiritual life can act as a psychological buffer. Studies consistently show this, right? They consistently show reduced anxiety around death, thanatophobia, right? Increased resilience during terminal illness among the religious. This isn't magic. This is the power of a coherent narrative, right? And I see this in action in my daily life with people that I love who are strong believers. When you believe your suffering has a purpose, your brain's prefrontal cortex can better regulate the amygdala's fear response. You also have the physiology of ritual, right? Guys, prayer and repetitive meditation, they are essentially vagus nerve exercises. I mean, they reduce sympathetic nervous system activation, your fight and flight or freeze mode, and they really promote your parasympathetic tone, that rest and regulate. Ritual creates predictability. I mean, when the world is chaotic, predictability is the gold standard, and the human brain craves patterns. And a Sunday service or a daily prayer, well, it provides a neurobiological anchor and it lowers your overall cortisol levels. They've shown this in studies. Religion lowers your stress, or can. And there's the power of proximity. Improved recovery outcomes post surgery are often linked to social support networks. Religion provides an instant tribe. In a world where loneliness is a literal killer, the church can provide a structure for co regulation. You aren't healing because of divine intervention necessarily. And again, we don't know, right? We don't know. But you're healing because your nervous system is being held by a community that reduces your stress response. That love, those prayers, all of that human bonding, right? It's all being poured into you. And the bottom line is these benefits are real, but they are derived from meaning, structure, and connection, right? Which is really just the psychological mechanics of the human machine. And guess what? You can still get these benefits without believing anything that's untestable. And again, this is my biggest problem with religion and spirituality. It is untestable. And as a man of science, I want to believe in things that I can test. Now, again, I am not saying that God is not real. I am not saying that religion does not provide any benefits. In fact, I just gave you a bunch. But I want to take things with the logical approach. I want to take things that are empirical, things that I can see. Doesn't mean your beliefs aren't real. It just means they're harder to buy into. And when people say they met God or felt one with the universe, I mean, they're not necessarily lying, right? Those experiences are biologically real. I mean, whether you're on a meditation retreat in Tibet or a psilocybin trip in a clinical lab, the brain is undergoing specific, measurable shifts in how it processes reality. The interpretation is the software, but the experience is the hardware. And we also have ego dissolution, right? And the DMN, the default mode network, right? Which is really a collection of brain regions, primarily the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex. And what these do is they act as the brain's executive hub, I guess, right? This is where, your self lives, I guess. It's the narrator telling the story of who you are, your past, your present, your future. Now, during mystical experiences, the default mode network's activity drops off a cliff. When the DMN goes quiet, the boundary between me and everything else disappears. And this is why you feel one with the universe. The part of your brain that draws the border simply stopped working. You've also got gamma wave synchronization. Peak spiritual states, they are often characterized by a massive surge in gamma wave activity, which, is above 30 hertz. These are the highest frequency brain waves that you can get, and they're associated with binding different sensory inputs into a single cohesive experience. In intense prayer or deep meditation, really, maybe transcendental meditation, what we see is a global synchronization where the whole brain begins to pulse in a unified rhythm. And this creates a state of hyper awareness and then sensation of universal truth or clarity that transcends language. I mean, this helps to explain possibly why some people go into speaking with tongues and things like this. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's why, I'm saying it's a possibility scientifically. I mean, we have altered serotonin signaling. Most mystical states, whether induced by fasting, rhythmic chanting, psychedelic therapy, they involve the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor. Now, when these receptors are stimulated, it increases neural complexity, right? Meaning the parts of the brain that usually don't talk to each other, they start having a conversation, right? The visual center starts talking to the emotional center, right? Which is why people see music, feel colors, etc. Synesthesia, right? But religion also sort of like activates this stuff. The bottom line is meditation, psychedelic therapy, intense prayer are all just different back doors into the same neurological state. The brain isn't touching God in a literal physical sense. It is temporarily suspending the self representation hardware. It's not that the universe became one, it's that your brain lost the ability to tell you that you are separate from that universe. And there's a dark side to religion too, right? When you combine religion with power, freedoms exit the chat. I mean, this is where things get really spicy, right? When religious certainty enters political power, I mean, all of a sudden, moral disagreement becomes heresy. And you know what they did to heretics back in the day? It wasn't good. It ain't gonna be good unless we can get our old noggins to synchronize around some science here. I mean, law becomes divine mandate. All of a sudden, God's telling the president or the emperor or whoever to do these things. And you better do them because, well, God said to. I mean, dissent becomes immoral just by speaking your piece, just by having an opinion other than the mainstream. All of a sudden, you're immoral, you're wrong, you're unethical, right? And historically, it's painfully clear what happens. High religiosity in leadership correlates with reduced reproductive rights, reduced LGBTQ plus protections, reduced freedom of expression. But guys, this is where the other side gets it wrong, right? It's not because believers are evil, but because certainty, it kills nuance. Science survives by being wrong. Religion dies if it is. To wrap up this episode, we're contrasting the rigid certainty of dogma with the agile intelligence of the scientific method. I mean, we're going to move from being a subject of a belief system to being a participant in reality. I mean, people often mistake scientific confidence for arrogance. I'm sure I've already had some of those people today. It's actually the opposite. I mean, religion is arrogant because it starts with the final answer and then spends centuries torturing the facts to fit the conclusion. Science is the only system of thought that builds being wrong into its core architecture. It's a feature, not a bug. In science, if you prove the reigning champion wrong with better data, you get a Nobel Prize. In religion, if you prove the reigning champion wrong, you're a heretic and you're being hung or burned or something like this. The scientific method, I mean, it thrives on peer review and replicability, right? It is a self cleaning oven for human bias. And then there's the logic of falsifiability, right? As Karl Popper famously argued, for a theory to be scientific, it must be falsifiable. I mean, you have to be able to state exactly what evidence would prove you wrong. Now, religion by design is unfalsifiable, right? There is no piece of evidence, no bone, no star, no tragedy that a believer can't explain away as part of a mysterious plan. Science doesn't care about feelings. Science is the cold, hard look at the mechanics of the universe. And quite frankly, it can make it really uncomfortable. But the good news is that science is really reliable. I mean, guys, you trust your life to science every time you step on a plane or take an antibiotic. You don't bet on the interpretation of a text. You bet on the law of physics. I mean, these things have been tested a billion times over. So how do you have spirituality without the BS? Well, here's a synthesis. People think that if they walk away from the magic, they have to walk away from the meaning. That is the trap right there. That is the trap. You don't need a deity to feel a sense of awe. You don't need a threat of hell to be a good person. You can have the peak experiences of the human condition without the control software attached. Guys, when you look at the Hubble Deep Field or contemplate 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution that led to your specific consciousness, that is alive and thriving. That is awe. It is grounded in the sheer, staggering scale of reality, though, not the fear of judgment. You are a way for the cosmos to know itself, as Sagan put it. That's a biological fact, and it's more poetic than any myth. Secular morality, right? This happens, right? And it doesn't need the threats. Secular morality is based on empathy and game theory, not divine commands, and that makes it better. You're doing it because it's the right thing, not because you're going to hell if you don't. We are good to each other because we understand the social contract. Cooperation leads to better survival outcomes for everyone. It is ethical action driven by logic and compassion, not a point system for the afterlife. And here's the beauty, right? We can have new rituals. I mean, spirituality grounded in science looks like meditation to regulate the nervous system. It looks like service to trigger oxytocin, community bonding, and curiosity to engage the prefrontal cortex. And the bottom line is you are moving from submission to participation. You aren't a servant of a higher power. You are a conscious observer of a magnificent, complex, and indifferent universe. You are the architect of your own meaning, autonomy. Now, I want you to do this for your own practice. I want you to ask yourself these questions. What gives me awe? What is it in life that sort of, makes me feel like that little kid again, wanting to soak up, all the knowledge you can from dad or mom? What reduces fear? What reduces fear? What expands your compassion? Because, guys, compassion and empathy, they trump fear every single time if you want a good life. And finally, what survives questioning. Keep those. Discard all the rest. Religion isn't disappearing, it's just mutating. The real question isn't, is there a God? It's who gets to decide what that means and who pays the price. If this episode made you uncomfortable, good. That's where thinking starts. And that's all I want you to do here at Planting Thoughts. Guys, if you want more conversations that cut through the dogma, fear, and nonsense, subscribe to Planting Thoughts. We don't tell you what to believe. We teach you how to think, and then you make those thoughts happen. I'm Mike, and this is Planting Thoughts. See ya.